exclusively on Secular Media Network. This is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Hello and welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the LGBT rights movement and the atheist movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined by my co-host, Ari Stillman. What's up, Ari?
I feel like I've just come out of the desert and am now floating in a pool of crystal clear water because I just spent a weekend full of all the most terrible puns you can think of, and now I am home.
Is that how you describe your time with Jeremiah?
That is indeed.
A desert filled with nothing but bad puns?
Here's what I learned is don't go to the zoo with Jeremiah because it will all be animal puns for 4 hours. 4 hours!
I'm actually angry that you didn't get audio of this for the show. I'm just going to let you know this. All I want to know.
Record a Farnsworth quote in front of the gorillas, but
perfect.
There were too many people, so we couldn't get the audio.
And I assume you did insult him steadily for me on my behalf.
Yeah, but also just because that's just how I do it normally.
Right,
just,
that's fair. That's
just
fair.
Randomly, like, hey, you're really ugly.
That's really mean.
And he's like, yeah, I mean, I can accept that.
All right. Well, this week, for those who haven't heard before, we do an occasional good news episode where we kind of forget about the awful things that are happening in the outside world, and we just talk about happy stuff. So we like to talk about good things that are going on in our lives personally. We talk about good things going on in the news, kind of feel good stories about LGBT folks or atheist folks, and then we spend the last little bit of the show celebrating good things that are happening in your lives. So normally in the first segment, it's just Ari and I just kind of riffing on the awesome things going on in our lives. But this week, we actually have a really special guest, and her name is...
I'm so excited!
And her name is Keira. Hi, Keira.
Hi!
And tell everyone how old you are.
I am 9 years old.
9 years? You're not going to tell me how many months? Because that's important, right?
It is.
You're like... So you're not like 9.5 or 9.25? No. Oh.
Just 9.
Okay. Fair enough. I
probably just turned 9 yesterday.
I just want to make sure we have our information accurate is all. So Keira, in this segment of the show, Ari and I usually just talk about the good stuff that's happening for us. And we're going to do that a little bit later. But Keira, tell me what's going on that's awesome in your life right now.
Well, I think that it's awesome that for school I got to take home a computer.
Whoa, what kind of computer is it?
Apple Mac.
Whoa, that's super fancy. So
they gave you a computer? Like, what's going on here?
Well, for 4th grade, we all get computers to work on and stuff.
That's cool. So, like, I mean, do you do your homework on it and stuff?
Well, yeah, this year I'm going to be able to take it home and do homework on it.
You realize that's like a super cool thing. Like, old people like me and Ari and your dad, we didn't have that.
I'm not as old as you are, Callie, okay? We had little, I don't even know what you would call them. I guess they were like little word processors. We couldn't take them home, but like every so often we'd be able to play with them for an hour or two in class, and we would just write little stories, and there was like a character limit on there, and that was super exciting.
Yeah,
so that's what we did back in my day.
Yeah, we had an Apple II, like 1 in each class. So Keira, what's your favorite subject in school? What do you like to learn about?
I like reading because for my grade, for like my card that got sent home from my parents, I was doing really I had like a high score on reading.
That's cool. So what kind of stuff do you like to read? What's your favorite story?
Well, there's this story that I'm working on to read because it's a really, really big book, but it's called The Familiars.
I think I've heard of that. I haven't read it, though.
What's it about?
So far I've only read the beginning, and it's about this cat who lives on the alley, and he's like trying to get fish from this man, and then he meets some other like animals that have magic powers.
Whoa, that sounds really exciting. If you could have any magic power, Keira, what would your magic power be? What would you do?
The power to have all the powers, of course.
Yeah, I like.
I was about to say you're supposed to let the guest answer, Ari. Meanie. No, that's awesome. So what would you do? I mean, if you had superpowers, what would you do with them?
I don't know.
You don't know? Like I mean, if you could fly, where would you fly to?
Paris.
Paris? What's going on in Paris? Why do you like Paris?
I don't know. I've just always wanted to go there.
That's cool. I've been there. I've been on top of the Eiffel Tower. It's really cool. I hope you get to go someday.
Yeah, I want to go.
So what else is awesome? What else are you really excited about?
Interesting. You should bring that up, Kelly. Last year, I met you in Ohio because I was going to Camp Quest.
Yeah.
This year, I went to Camp Quest again. Guess where I went?
Where'd you go?
Michigan.
That's really cool. So tell me about Camp Quest. Was it a lot of fun? It was fun the first time, right?
Yeah, it was super fun.
So what kind of stuff did you do?
This year we did horseback ride. Well, it was too hot for us to ride the horses, so we did. We cleaned the horses, and we did tie-dye shirts, and we made silly putty, and we did rock wall, and at the top of the rock wall there was a zip line.
Oh, I love zip lines. Those are fun.
And did you do the zip line? Did you just fly all the way down?
At the second time I went up, I got stuck at one part, so they helped me up the first part because it was in the woods, so they were pulling us on ropes, and so we were because it was really high. So when I got stuck, they pulled me up, and then I grabbed on, and I went the whole way up, and I went on the zip line.
That's so cool. I went to camp when I think I was a little older than you. I was 12 or 13 when I went to camp, and I can tell you that it was not that cool. You're super lucky.
Yeah, Camp Quest sounds great. I've heard a lot of really awesome things about it from people on other podcasts.
I mean, I think my favorite part of you going to Camp Quest was us seeing the Minions movie together, but I think I'm a little biased, so.
So, last year I went to Ohio. This year I went to Michigan, and next year I'm going to Minnesota.
Wow. And is that just so you can get, different experiences in different places, or
Yes.
why? That's awesome. So your parents are pretty awesome, aren't they?
My mom and dad are going to send me around the country doing Camp Quest.
That's really cool. You're super lucky to have a mom and dad that do that, right?
Yep.
They're pretty.
They're the best parents in the world.
And I'm sure you saying that has nothing to do with the fact that your dad's sitting right next to you, does it?
Mm-mm.
No.
She really, really means it.
So is there anything else that you're super excited about? Is there other stuff that you want to talk about that you want the world to know about?
This is your chance. You're going to be famous.
Yeah, you're going to be a rock star after this. I hope you know.
Well, I want to let my Uncle Larry know that I was on here.
That's cool.
Shout out to Uncle Larry.
Yeah, shout out to Uncle Larry. I have an Uncle Larry too.
I don't. I'm not in the Uncle Larry club.
The reason why I want to let Uncle Larry know is because he's gay.
Oh, okay. So you just want to let him know that you love him and you support him, right?
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Well, now he has to listen to the show so he can hear that.
Right.
And Uncle Edgar.
And Uncle Edgar, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
Shout out to Uncle Edgar.
Why don't you tell them who Uncle Edgar is?
Uncle Edgar is my uncle, and he's gay too, and he's married to Uncle Larry.
Oh, okay. So Uncle Edgar and Uncle Larry are a couple.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
And they're awesome.
And you're pretty awesome too. You know that.
Thank you.
So
You're way better at taking compliments than I am.
So why don't you tell me why you wanted to come on the show? So your dad sent me a message and said that you wanted to come on to the show and talk about stuff. You want to tell me about that conversation?
Well, a while ago, Daddy asked me if you were on Kelly's show, what would you talk about? And I told him pink fluffy unicorns.
Okay, so I'm curious why we haven't talked about pink fluffy unicorns yet. What are we doing? We're slacking here.
I know another show actually that you should go on and talk about. It's called Promoting Secular Feminism. And they have a unicorn who's like their mascot. So I think they would love to have you on to talk about pink fluffy unicorns.
My friend taught me this song, and ever since I remembered it, and when Dad asked me what I wanted to say, it just like popped up in my brain, so I said pink fluffy unicorns.
Well, now that you've mentioned it, you have to sing this song for us, right?
Okay.
Is that something you're okay to do? Oh yeah, you were okay. Yeah, you're already on it. Go for it.
Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows.
That's amazing.
Once this episode airs, I'm going to cut out a clip of you singing that, and I'm going to put it as my ringtone.
If that's okay. I mean, that's.
I'll put it as the ringtone for when Callie calls me. So when Callie calls me, it'll sing that song.
It's perfect.
It really is. It really is perfect. Keira, it has been a lot of fun having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for talking about thanks for talking about what's awesome in your life.
If you don't mind, Kelly, I'd like to share something with your guest.
Yeah.
Last year, we were prepping to travel to Ohio to drop Keira off for Camp Quest. And I threw out on one of the atheist websites that we were headed in that direction, and we wanted to meet up with any local atheists. And you almost immediately replied and said you'd be more than happy to meet up with us. And that night, we met you at a restaurant for a bite to eat, got to talk, and I told you then that I wanted to know more about you as the person, and I said as far as some of the other issues go, like what you're interested in the movement, I said I would learn that about you through your podcast, but I wanted to know you and the things that you might be interested in outside of the podcast. And that's when you started telling me that you were a Trekkie. And
How did I know? I knew it was going to be something about Star Trek.
And you had a love for music. And I was extremely exhausted because when I met you that night, I was on my 19th hour or 20th hour of being awake. So I wasn't completely with it. I was kind of tired. I had worked that day, and then we drove to Ohio from Chicago, and so I was pretty exhausted by the time we got there. But I greatly appreciated meeting up with you, and you made a huge impact on my girls. And it was a beautiful experience of being able to spend a few hours with you on both days that we went down there. And Keira and Scarlett both have mentioned you several times since we've met you. So you've made an impact on my daughters, and who knew that a family from Chicago would have been so impressed by somebody so instantly. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mike, you're going to make me cry. You can scratch the Callie Cries thing off the bingo card already.
Yep. There you go.
Well, you guys had a huge impact on me too. I loved meeting you, and your wife, and your girls. It was a whole lot of fun, and it was cool just hanging out and watching a movie and eating popcorn, and so yeah, I appreciated meeting you guys, and you guys made a huge impact on me too. So thank you.
Thank you. And Keira, did you have any last words?
Well, I just wanted to say that I lost my tooth today, and that I love you, Callie.
Yes! Those are the best two things ever said by a guest on this show. You hold that title. That's so awesome, Keira. And I love you too. And I hope the Tooth Fairy leaves you like $5,000 for that tooth.
Me
Aw.
too.
I want $5,000. If I take one of my teeth out, can I get $5,000 from your surgery?
It's inflation. I got a quarter. Kids today get $5,000. It's
right.
yeah. We've that ship has sailed for us. Keira, thank you again so much for coming on. I love you a lot, and hopefully we'll get to hang out soon. Okay.
Thank you, and I hope to see you very, 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 very soon.
You too, and thank you, Mike. Take care.
Have a great night.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my God, I'm melting.
She's
Ari,
the most preciousest person in the world.
I love her so much. So in the couple of minutes left we have for this segment, there's literally no good news that either you or I are going to have that's going to top that. But like, that's the show that we're doing. So you want to just talk about some good news that you have going on?
I don't know. I can't think of anything. I didn't just do anything this weekend. That was super fun and awesome. I didn't do anything like that.
Ouch. So did you do anything this weekend that was excruciatingly painful?
Yeah, I got to hear a lot of puns and bad jokes, and so that was that. But so I was in St. Louis with Jeremiah. We were originally going for Gateway to Reason, but that conference got canceled. But we decided we would not give up on our second date, so we went and hung out, and we went to the zoo on Saturday, which was awesome. And then we went to the City Museum today, which, if you haven't heard of it, is basically, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like, you know, those old play places. I don't think they have them in McDonald's anymore, but you know, those places with the tubes and the ball pit and stuff.
A lot of Chick-fil-A's actually have them, believe it or not.
It's like that,
Yeah.
but 10 million times better. And for
my
adults
God.
and kids. It's
So-
awesome.
so the
You
place
get
is
to, like,
called a
climb through
museum,
caves.
and it's-
yeah, it's
and
called
it's-
the City Museum.
So like, it's a museum that has this too, or is like it that, and it's just called a museum?
That's most of what it is. There's also like a small little art section, but most of it is just like climbing around on stuff, and they've got different sections that are themed, and you can climb up and go down a slide that's 10 stories tall, and there's also a 5-story version for the littler kids. So it was really awesome. We just basically ran around there and climbed on stuff for 3 hours. And it was, if I had gone there as a kid, I would like cry as soon as we left, because I loved exploring stuff when I was a kid, and it brought back that kind of feeling for me, going through like caves and stuff and seeing all sorts of little hidden things. It was really, really fun.
That's awesome. Gosh, I want to go now.
And also there were kisses involved, so that was cool too.
But the kisses are the footnote, obviously.
Yep.
So, so is that all you have? Just this horrible, awful, no good weekend with Jeremiah?
Yeah, I guess so.
I've got a couple of things. So first, the horrible torture contraption of a strapless bra that I have fits now. One, because like I had Celeste to help me put it on, so it was like placed in the right spot, so I didn't want to like crawl into a hole and die after wearing it for a while for this fancy thing today that I look super cute for. So that's good. But the serious good news is that I have lost almost 30 pounds.
Holy crap, Callie, that's amazing.
Yeah. I had started to do like a podcast project about my weight loss journey, and I figured out like it's too much work. It's not something that I can fit on my plate at this point.
Turns out doing a podcast is a lot of work.
Right.
I feel like you should know this already.
Yeah, it's not something that I can fit on my plate right now, but I really do. I think I want to do an episode about skeptical weight loss and like, you know, what the scientific evidence is. We might do it as an extra episode, because I don't know if let's do this. TheGaytheistManifesto@gmail.com. If that's an episode that you think you want to hear, shoot us an email and let us know. Because I don't want to, you know, subject everyone to that if it's not something that they would be interested in. But, you know, from a skeptical point of view, you know, and if anyone's interested in learning, you know, how exactly I've done it. But long story short, I've started seeing an actual weight loss doctor, because I'm going to have weight loss surgery, hopefully, fingers crossed, at the end of the year or in January. And I also read a really great book called The Diet Fix that's just completely and totally changed my attitude about health and wellness and I'm losing weight. I'm actually enjoying the process, like, because moderate exercise is fun for me. I'm eating foods that I like. I'm just being smarter about the portions and the timing and that kind of stuff. So, I'm not going to say it's been a breeze. It's been challenging, but it hasn't been this monumentally difficult, like awful, torturous process that that had been my experience previously. So yeah, doing that, I've dropped almost 30 pounds, before, before this whole, surgery thing happened. So I'm really, really excited about that. And proud of the fact that I finally seem to have this thing at least somewhat under control. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that.
I wish I had the applause button. I would play it for you right now.
I'll edit applause in for you. So just go ahead and act like you just heard it.
Oh, wow, but everyone's clapping for you, Callie. That's amazing. Where are all these people coming from?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And then, and really the only other thing, and this is just tonight, Sunday night, as we're recording this, PFLAG, a great organization called it's Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. It's a support group for, parents and families and friends of folks who come out. And it's kind of a support group for them to, learn how to be supportive and, of their kids or their friends or, the youth in their life. And the Cincinnati chapter's 30th anniversary is this year, and the Tri-State Freethinkers had a table there, and they invited us to be there as a part of Tri-State Freethinkers. So that was a lot of fun. And it's the cutest I've looked in a long time, and I was able to fit into this damned strapless bra that I'm still wearing. So that's fun.
I just thought of a great story from the trip.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That also counts as good news because it's hilarious.
Yeah, go for it.
So I don't know if most people listening to the show know what Jeremiah looks like, but he has a beard and
dirtiest
long hair.
of hippies.
The dirtiest of hippies, absolutely. He's got hair, down past his shoulders, and it's the prettiest hair in the world. But anyway, so we are at the museum. We finally found a restaurant because they don't give you maps at this place, and the whole place is a labyrinth. Like, they purposefully don't make maps so that you can, have the experience of trying to find stuff. And there are restaurants scattered throughout the whole place, so you have to, find where the restaurants are. And we got there, and we were like, oh, we gotta have food before we do all this exploring. So we finally found the restaurant, and we're sitting there eating, and one of the workers comes up while we're eating and leans down next to our table and says to Jeremiah, hey, so one of my coworkers says that she thinks that you're Russell Brand, and she wants to take a picture with you. She's a huge fan of Russell Brand, and she's like, I'm pretty sure that's Russell Brand. So could she take a selfie with you? And he was like, okay. She didn't actually end up doing it, but that was hilarious.
Oh my God.
I gave him a high five because he didn't get Dave Grohl that time, which is what he usually gets.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that so much. And I see Dave Grohl too a lot.
Yeah. I thought that when he came up, he started talking about Russell Brand, and I thought that he was talking about I have an American Humanist Association pin on my bag that says keep church and state separate. And I was like, oh, Russell Brand is an atheist, so he's coming up to talk about how he loves Russell Brand and go separation of church and state and stuff. And nope, it was just to talk about Jeremiah looking like a dirty hippie.
So the challenge to our listeners who know Jeremiah is now to speak only to him in either Russell Brand quotes or Foo Fighters lyrics, one of those two. So you're welcome for that, Jeremiah. So we're going to take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're going to have some news stories that give us the feels. More Gaytheist Manifesto after this.
Feels.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends.
In biology,
In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes
In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in school today
The only thing I didn't learn today
the only thing I didn't learn
It's why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov.
The staff of Secular Coalition for America lobbies U.S. Congress on issues of separation of church and state, and they've become a powerhouse for change in the United States government. You'll definitely want to subscribe to receive their email action alerts. These are updates for important issues and ones that you can get involved with directly. And hopefully, you'll consider making a contribution to the Secular Coalition for America to help them continue fighting for your equality. You can do it all at secular.org.
Welcome back to the Atheist Manifesto. So in this segment, we have found some cool news stories that give us the feel-goods. And we're going to start with some Olympic-related stuff, because obviously that's a thing that's going on now. So Chris Mosier, as a lot of people may have seen, was actually featured in a Nike ad. And, you know, we've talked on the show before about representation and what representation means. And, you know, obviously having trans people or gay people represented in media is not the end all and be all of progress, but it is a big deal. And so Chris Mosier is, I think he does a lot of things. He does biking and running, and he's actually on, it's Team USA. So he's not actually an Olympian, but he's on Team USA. He represented the U.S.
As are we all.
Right. USA. So he represented the United States at the Duathlon World Championships in Spain. And so during the Olympics, there is an ad for Nike called Ultimate Courage that, features Chris Mosier. And it's just, I don't know, it's really cool. So in the ad, the way that they set it up, it's kind of like a conversation. Like the narrator is talking to Chris and he says, "Hey Chris, how'd you know you'd be fast enough to compete against men?" And he's biking under this hallway and he just looks and he's like, "I didn't." And then the narrator's like, "Or strong enough?" And Chris is like, "I didn't," as he's doing dips in some dingy looking gym. And they said, "Yeah, but how'd you know the team would accept you?" And he's in the men's locker room changing clothes. He looks at the camera and goes, "I didn't." And then he says, "Or that you'd even be allowed to compete." And he's running along a bridge and he looks at the camera and he says, "I didn't." And the narrator says, "Oh, that must have been tough. Didn't you ever want to give up?" And Chris says, "Yeah, but I didn't." And then, the unlimited courage thing just comes across as he's, running away. And, trans people in sports is something that I want to do an episode sooner than later on. I'm trying to line up guests to be on that show, because I want to have actual trans athletes to talk about their experience as well as the science. Because I feel like that's something that even a lot of people who are, very accepting and very open still sort of, are still sort of hesitant about, and there's no reason to be. We won't get into that now. But so I thought this ad was really cool. It was really well done. I'm always kind of two minds in a situation like this, because, you look at, a company like Nike, who does not have the best record for human rights, because they've historically had problems with using sweatshops and that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's awesome that they do this, and it's progress, and I love it, because that ad is awesome, because the message is like, wait, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this stuff, but I just did it, and just do it. Like, obviously that's Nike's thing. So it's hard for me to not be a little cynical about big companies like that now taking advantage of that to, to look progressive because it's somewhat popular to do so now, when, they may not necessarily actually be the best on human rights stuff. But just on its own, I mean, seeing a transgender athlete on a commercial during the Olympics that's something that was undeniably huge for me. Just like seeing, that person speak at the DNC was a big deal. So that was pretty cool. So Ari, what's your story?
And I'm sure a lot of people seeing that commercial, like other trans athletes, are really, really happy to see that, because I'm sure it's really difficult for them, as you said. People have problems with trans people competing in the categories that they want to compete in for various reasons. So there's, I'm sure, a lot of discrimination and things there. So it must be really, really cool for them to see someone who's like them, he's not in the Olympics, but he's, a top athlete in his sport. So yeah, I'm really happy for that. There you go.
Well, yeah. And it's, like I said in the DNC wrap up episode, we were talking about, for a lot of trans people, when we come out, one of the questions that we ask ourselves is, so what is this going to limit me from doing in my life? And not because of any lack of capability that I have, but the fact that just being trans sometimes means that the door is just plain not open to you. Mm-hmm. And I just have to think there are so many trans kids who want to be athletes who don't think that they can, because their school doesn't let them, or because they know how hostile the world can be, and they now see one of them in a damn Nike commercial. And now, that door's wedged open just a little bit. So like, wow, and maybe that's a thing that I can do if, sports is something that means something to me. Sports at one time was a thing that meant a lot to me. I loved playing sports. I really don't care for watching sports. I love playing sports. But yeah, I think this is huge. Ari, what's your story?
I ain't got no story. Okay, so this article is called 5 Reasons Out Olympic Rugby Player Jillian Potter is Our Inspiration. So she is a lesbian woman who is an Olympic rugby player, as I said. And this article on Pride.com talks about some reasons, some related to her being a lesbian and some not, about why she is an inspiring person. And the first one is, she is an out lesbian who has a visible relationship with her wife, which is a big deal for the Olympics. I remember a few years ago when the Olympics were in Russia, there was, Russia's a pretty anti-gay place, and, they were...
and Brazil is too.
Yeah, Brazil as well. If you have ever participated in a Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is the vigil for trans people who have been murdered throughout the year, Brazil has usually the top number of people.
It's usually like 1/3 of the list, at least.
Yes.
Just from Brazil.
So, yeah, so being gay in the Olympics is a big deal, because this is a world stage, and not, America has its issues with accepting people for their gender and their sexuality, but, there are other places where people have it a lot worse, where, there's the death penalty for homosexuality. So it's really important for LGBT people to be able to be open when they're on that sort of a platform, which is something that she's doing. There's a quote from her in this article. Jillian Potter knows that being publicly out is about more than just living her own life authentically. It transforms society's views when young boys and girls see gay athletes with their partners and they ask their parents, "Oh, is that okay?" It becomes commonplace, something people don't have to be afraid of. While networks often seem to gloss over the partners of out Olympic athletes, Potter casually talks about her wife, Carol Fabrizio, in interviews, cute segments about her wife encouraging her to floss, normalize lesbian relationships in front of a global audience.
Yeah, and I think the thing to take away from this, aside from that being adorable, first of all, is it's the idea of normalizing queer people. It's not just about like, hey, we exist. It's about it. The idea eventually is for being gay, for being trans, to be no more significant than the fact that maybe I'm left-handed. It's something that's different about you, but it's not something that's worth paying attention to or worth commenting on because nobody cares, because it shouldn't mean anything different for your life. Unfortunately, we live in a world where it does. But having gay couples doing just normal couple things, not even like, hey, we're gay and we're a couple, check us out. It's no, like, we're a couple and we do cute things because couples do cute things. And and it's just, and I think that's something that's important, and it's something that I think maybe goes unrecognized sometimes, the power of simply normalizing those things. So.
Yeah, and I totally understand, all the other mentions in this article that some of the athletes in the Olympics are not comfortable talking about that. And I definitely understand why, being on such a huge platform, even in America, which is, as I said before, it has its issues, but it's, a fairly accepting place. It's getting better for same-sex couples out there in America. But, it's still something that a big minority, I hope it's a minority of our population, has an issue with and, can get you a lot of criticism. So a lot of them don't feel comfortable talking about that sort of thing just because they don't want that kind of attention on them. They want to focus on, being an athlete and the things that they're doing in the Olympics. And then when you bring it on a world stage and the whole world is talking about you, there are other conservative countries that would have a big problem with that. So I can definitely understand why those people don't want to talk about that kind of thing publicly. As well as they probably don't want to be tokenized. They probably don't want to be like the gay athlete. But I think it's really cool.
I think there's probably a legitimate concern for bringing their partners into it as well, because
that too, yeah.
I think there's a certain degree to where if you're going to be an athlete in the public spotlight, whether it's something you're happy about or not, you accept the fact that, like, well, okay, like, I'm going to be on a world stage. This is going to be a thing that people are going to talk about, whether I like it or not. But, they want to choose not to feed into that kind of thing simply because their partner didn't accept that. They didn't agree to that. So they want to be careful not to bring their partners into those conversations if they don't want to. And that's something that I 100% understand.
Yeah, but she definitely seems comfortable with it. And I'm really glad that she's doing it because, for all the other couples, and just not even the couples, just the athletes who are queer, who might not even be in a relationship, who don't feel comfortable talking about that kind of thing and don't feel comfortable being out. She's someone who does feel comfortable doing that. So she's kind of, speaking on their, maybe not on their behalf, but, just kind of trying to, like you said earlier, normalize this kind of thing so that more people can feel comfortable in the future and be themselves, which is really important.
Awesome. So why else are we inspired?
Well, let's see here. She had a broken neck and recovered from it, which is
hardcore. Is what that is.
Yeah. And she's in the Olympics now, which is great. She broke her neck in 2010 and didn't find out it was broken until 3 weeks later. Holy crap.
Yeah. And like all of her friends and family were like, you need to retire. And she's like, yeah, screw you guys.
She's also had cancer. So she's been through a lot.
And this is like just recovering from having a broken neck. She finds out she has a tumor in her jaw.
Yeah. There's a quote here. She said about having cancer, for me, it's just kind of the never give up attitude. In rugby, a common theme that happens in the game is just getting tackled, getting knocked down again and again, and just having to get back up and get back into the game or get back into life. Things are always going to knock you down, and just being able to get up from that and staying present and focusing on what you can control will really help you get over those challenges.
Yeah, and
very wise words.
Like I said, I loved playing sports as a kid. I don't really care to watch sports. I don't have this derision for sports that some people seem to have. What sporting culture can be is something I'm obviously not a fan of, because a lot of it's, toxic masculinity and like super bro like culture. Like I'm not really into that, but like what she said there, that was a lot of what I got out of sports. It's, it's lessons that you take into other areas of your life. Like, you keep going, you know what your capabilities are, you know what your limitations are, and you do your best to push those. And when you fail, you don't give up. You go back, work to get better or reassess your strategy and that kind of stuff. So, I wish that was the dominant attitude in sports, and I would probably be a much bigger sports fan if that's what it was really about.
The thing I learned from sports is I like academics.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and the other things here, I mean, it's just, it's about her being positive and humble and getting the job done.
Just being an all-around cool person.
Right. So yeah, I think it's cool that, there's this balance of her not being, not hiding who she is, not trying to get away from it all or anything like that. But at the end of the day, like, she's cool with talking about all this stuff, but at the end of the day, what it's really about for her is her profession, which is, playing rugby, which I think is cool. I can appreciate that. And then last Olympic related or sports related story here. Have you seen so a women's rugby player at the Olympics proposed to her girlfriend, right after the match? So,
precious.
So after Australia took home gold at the first women's rugby sevens competition, I know what rugby is. I don't know what rugby sevens is. Whatever. So she gave a speech, and then, they gave a hug, and there were applause, and her quote, God, it's just so adorable. The Olympic Games can look like closure for me. Or the Olympic Games can look like closure, but for me, it's starting a new life with someone. I wanted to show people that love wins, which is, I think that's cool. And, we talked about Brazil earlier being an awful place for trans people, and it absolutely is. But it's interesting because marriage equality has been the law there since 2013. And the country's National Justice Council voted 14-1 to approve it. And it's been appealed to their Supreme Court, I guess. And same-sex unions, I guess, have been legal since 2004. I'm curious, were they actually illegal before that? I don't know. So again, it's a visibility thing. And, you can see people on the field cheering, and they're hugging, and they look so happy, and I'm about to cry again because I love.
Double bingo.
Right. But apparently there are over 40 out athletes at the Olympics this time, which I think is pretty awesome. And and this is obviously in contrast to the Winter Olympics in Sochi in Russia, where it was actually against the law for people, to come out. So like they had to be even more like in the closet there than some folks have to be now. So that's cool.
Okay, so this one is not Olympics related, finally.
Gosh, bitter.
I don't know, the title's a little bit misleading here, but the title of the article is Governor Kate Brown Veers from Typical Graduation Speech to Talk About Her Sexuality. So this is, what is she the governor of? Oregon. That's right. Thanks for helping me out with facts. She is, she's the first openly bisexual governor in the United States. And she was giving a graduation speech at Willamette University. And I'm just going to read some of the stuff here. The thing. Okay. Her speech had all the hallmarks of a typical commencement address. My editorializing, it's probably real boring.
Because I've been to a few and they are all boring.
She told the 400-some graduates to find a path, help others, have ambition, and work hard, and blah, blah, blah. That was my editorializing as well, the blah, blah, blah part. And then the governor made uncharacteristic telling remarks about her personal life, details about being a family practice lawyer and public servant, underscored by the realities of living for years as a closeted bisexual. So she talked about in her speech back in the 80s when she was first becoming a lawyer, back in the day before we had all this fancy marriage equality and non-discrimination policies. She was dating a woman at the time. Now she's married to a man. So there's a little bit of that bisexual privilege we were talking about in the last episode. she was dating a woman at the time, and she was really scared that she was going to lose her job if she was outed. And she eventually was outed in the 90s against her wishes by the Oregonian, which I suppose is a newspaper, which published about a story about LGBT legislators. And that actually outed her to her parents, which is, again, going back to the don't out people thing that we were talking about before in the bisexuality episode. But since then, she's, obviously she's a very successful person. She's now the governor of a state, which is a huge deal. And she's had a very successful career as a lawyer. And so basically I guess the point of her speech was not to talk about her sexuality as the headline makes it out to be, but I guess it's just to talk about her experience, going through, being outed in a time when it was not nearly as accepted as it is now, and how she was able to still, have a career, even though she did face some discrimination from people around her and, some questioning. So I guess she was telling these graduates, be yourself, happy rainbows.
Right. Well, and I think the point is that from what I've read about her, because I was doing some reading about her, just prepping for the show, it's not something that she really tends to highlight a lot. It's something that she doesn't necessarily shy away from talking about, but it doesn't seem to be something that she goes out of her way to talk about. So I think that's kind of what they meant when it was a little uncharacteristic. And, because there's an anecdote in the article where they say that she sighed when someone asked if she resented the label as being, the nation's first openly bisexual governor. And she basically said it's more challenging for her family than her. And I guess her mom says, do they have to say it every single time? But the article ends by sharing this anecdote, which I think is pretty powerful and kind of sums up the reason that we think this stuff is important. So shortly after being sworn in, Brown received a letter from a young bisexual person in Indiana. It stuck with her. Quote, they felt like my coming out gave them a reason to live. Like there's other people out there like me. That's what I was able to say to my mom. This makes a huge difference for people. So, there it is.
Yeah, that's like we were talking about in the other stories about the Olympics, the importance of visibility. I think Caitlyn Jenner should take note from this woman about how to be a responsible, visible member of your minority community.
Right.
Because she's actively trying to, help her community, unlike certain other people that I just named. And that's something that, is really important, even if you're not out there, on the front lines of activism and going and talking to representatives and, donating all your money to organizations and that kind of thing. It's really important. That's something that I've learned doing this show, is just talking about who you are and being honest about it is really, really comforting for people who aren't able to do that or are at the beginning stages of being able to do that. Just feeling like they have someone out there that they can connect to, someone that can tell stories that are similar to theirs or to help give them a voice is really important to people. So, it's a similar thing here where she was talking to these students, and I'm sure there were, obviously there were some queer people sitting there in the audience listening to her speech, and I hope that they felt encouraged by that as well.
Cool. And so the next article, I've got some mixed feelings on this one. I think it's good to have on the episode because I do think it's a net positive, but I've got some feels about it. So the article's on advocate.com and it's titled Former Equality Foe. Homophobes are perverting Christianity. And basically, it's the story of this guy named Michael Corrin, and he's not someone that most people in the United States will have heard of, but he is apparently rather famous in Canada for his opposition to marriage equality. And so, this guy was a conservative rock star. So, like, television host, radio host, columnist, author. He was super famous for being a conservative. And apparently, he even won a National Broadcasting Award for a radio debate that he did on the issue. And he doesn't detail so much what took him down the path of changing his mind, but he eventually did. And he now has a book called Epiphany, A Christian's Change of Heart and Mind Over Same-Sex Marriage. And it's interesting because he actually uses his faith as an argument in favor of marriage equality. So he actually said that, studying his faith and studying the teachings of Jesus and those kind of things, that was actually what changed his mind. So, and he does. The Bible may not be explicitly positive about same-sex attraction, but goodness me, do David and Jonathan have a lot of explaining to do. So obviously I have some feels about this because I do think that Christianity is inherently anti-gay and inherently anti-trans by proxy. And, I've said on the show before, I am 100% in favor of allies in the religious community because a lot of them do important work. They do life-saving work. And they have all of the right attitudes about social justice issues, about queer and trans allyship, but they do still hold on to this Christian faith. And, if that's the only thing at this point that we can disagree on, I gotta just let that go to a certain degree. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not going to shy away from having the conversation with somebody if it comes up and it's an appropriate time and place for it. But if someone with whom that's literally the only disagreement that I have is about God, and they show up like, what can I do to help? I'm not going to be like, meh, F you, you're a Christian. Like, no, I'm just, I can't. I just can't.
Yeah, that's a separate conversation.
But that being said, I do have some feels because I do think Christianity is inherently anti-gay. But the most powerful line in this article to me is he says this. He says, "My hands, however, are not clean. I may have never hated, but I gave hatred an intellectual veneer. I empowered those who now turned on me. I caused harm and hurt, and I am ashamed." And I think this is important because, he is admitting, even though he may have never personally felt actual hatred towards somebody, he gave it an intellectual veneer, right? He legitimized these attitudes with what he was saying and what he was doing. And I think that's part of the conversation that we often miss, is when people do those things, they may not actually have hate in their heart, but they're enabling it by what they do. And it was super encouraging for me to hear someone admit that. So, and this guy has gone through all of the targeting online that I think we would all assume that he went through. So he was fired from Christian and conservative publications, lost his job at radio and television outlets, was accused of adultery, theft, mental illness, and of course accused of being gay himself, because what a crime.
Yep.
And they also went after his wife and kids, which is totally beyond the pale. And he even says, as a journalist, I've covered Middle Eastern wars and the Northern Ireland conflict, and I had never seen hatred like this. And I was just like, wow, like that's, unless he's being hyperbolic there, that's huge. Some other things, he said, we have to confess, and I use the word advisedly, that the genealogy of gay suffering has roots deep in church history. And just as Christians have in the past 50 years revised their understanding of and attitude towards the Jewish people, the same has to happen with the LGBTQ community. He used the Q.
Yeah, just like God. Donald Trump.
That, by necessity, will involve contrition, apology, and the opening wide of arms, mind, and soul. Nor do I mean the ersatz apology given by Pope Francis recently when he said in an interview that Catholics need to say sorry for offending gay men and women. He's just like, no, like, F that guy. Like we have to be genuine about this. And in a world where we know we're not going to get rid of Christianity, right? I mean, I think religion is on a decline. That's fair. But in a world where we know, I mean, there are going to be Christian people, like just plain and simple, right? And if I can make someone be accepting and loving and affirming towards LGBT people within the context of their own religion, that's a win for me. Because lives are at stake. I mean, these are not academic ideas that exist in a vacuum. I mean, lives are literally at stake here. So I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, and he gives the credit for his change of mind actually to Christianity. He talks about, the whole Jesus said to love everybody, and, Christianity is a religion of love, and that kind of thing that we hear all the time from, more liberal-minded Christians. And, as Callie said, and I agree that I don't think Christianity is necessarily, Christianity is a huge spectrum of things. It's in the Bible, there's some great stuff about loving your neighbor and, being kind to people who are in need and helping people who are poor and giving away your possessions and that kind of thing. And there's also, really horrible stuff in there about stoning homosexual people and, slavery is okay and, women who are raped have to marry their rapists and all sorts of terrible stuff. So I'm glad that he is now focusing on the positive aspects of what's in the Holy Book, which, of course, Christianity is not all great and awesome as he, I think, wants to make it out to be. So I disagree with him on that. But if he, again, as you said, he's still an ally to our cause. And I really like that he admits that Christianity has done, a lot of damage to LGBT people across the world and throughout history, which is really important. What we always talk about, how to be a good ally, and one of the steps of being a good ally is admitting your privilege, if you want to use those buzzwords. And that's something that he does, which is not something that you actually hear a lot, even from people who are on the more liberal end of Christianity. They'll just blame, the bad Christians for being bad and not focusing on love like Jesus did. And he does that, but he also, takes some responsibility for being part of this institution. And, again, I don't agree with his assessment of Christianity itself being pro-homosexuality and pro-queer people. But I do definitely appreciate that he has chosen to look at the more humanistic side as opposed to the more dogmatic side of his religion, and that he's going to try to use his religion for good in the world as opposed to using it for bad and for harming people as he used to.
Yeah, well, and I also think, I mean, just speaking of, movement-wise, I mean, this guy can be a powerful voice, right? Because he can look at the people who used to be where he is, and he's like, look, I used to be you. Like, I know, I don't just understand where you're coming from. I was where you're coming from. And here's how I got to where I am now. I mean, I think that's powerful. That can be very, very powerful. So yeah, I mean, like I said, disagreements about religion aside, like I'm glad this guy is on the right side of this issue, at least.
Amen.
Ari, you want to take the last one?
Last one. So Hillary Clinton gave an interview to The Advocate, which is an LGBT news organization that we read quite a bit of on the show when we're talking about news stories.
Most good news stories come from The Advocate.
So basically what she does here is just go over her I don't know what you would say, her ideology about, LGBTQ issues and how she's changed, because there's been a lot of criticism of her, especially in the primary, with Bernie people saying, Hillary Clinton only was, pro same-sex marriage when it was convenient for her. And there's legitimate criticism there that Bernie Sanders has been, far more progressive on these sorts of issues than she has. But she talks a bit about how she's, changed her mind on these sorts of things and what she wants to accomplish, hopefully when she gets into office. And she talks a bit about, Donald Trump and how his presidency would affect the LGBT community, which is something that we've talked quite a bit about. So let's see. She says he promises to sign the First Amendment Defense Act, immediately rescind President Obama's executive actions protecting LGBT people from discrimination, and work to overturn the Supreme Court's marriage equality ruling. He is 100% wrong on each of those positions. And she talks a bit more about how his presidency would be really, really damaging for the queer and trans community, which is, again, something that we've talked about quite a bit on this show.
I mean, there's lots of stuff that I appreciate in here. And I have to point out that obviously we have to look at anything a politician says with skepticism, right? Because...
you should look at everything.
Right. But I mean, especially with politicians, because we know oftentimes they're going to say whatever is the right thing to say to who they're talking to. So obviously we're looking at that through this lens. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm like, oh my God, look at how amazing Hillary is. But like, frankly, this is what we have to go on, right? What she's saying. And if she acts in a way that's contrary to what she's saying, then we can hold her feet to the fire over that. And that's okay.
And we will.
Will we ever? One of the questions that they ask, which I think is a totally valid question, every national leader who is now pro-marriage equality has evolved on the issue. Do you feel you're held to a different standard than President Obama or Vice President Biden or Secretary John Kerry, who have also changed their views? And her answer simply was no. LGBT Americans and all Americans have every right to hold us accountable. And like, I mean, could there be a more fair answer to that question? Like, she's saying, like, yeah, you know what? People have questions about that. Sure, they should have questions.
I wish she would have elaborated a bit more, because that's literally all she said to answer that question. So she didn't really elaborate on that, and I would have liked more detail on that.
Well, I kind of appreciate the simplicity, because basically what that statement says to me tacitly is that the criticism that she's faced for quote-unquote evolving her position is legitimate. So she's not going in and saying like, yeah, I'm being held to a higher standard, blah blah blah. Here's all of the things that I have done. Like, here's the things that I deserve ally cookies for. She's just like, no, they have a right to hold us accountable. And I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I appreciate that too. And
so basically, the reason why this is good news is because she outlines her vision for when she's president, hopefully when. I can hear Tom from Cognitive Dissonance barfing in the background over President Trump. She talks about, the things that she wants to accomplish. The question here from the interviewer was, you've said that the Equality Act is a noble piece of legislation and it deserves to become law and it would be your highest priority, but Congress seems very unlikely to pass it. What can you do in the face of an intransigent Congress? She says in 2016, there are still places in America where LGBT people can be fired or evicted from their home, not because of anything they've done, just because of who they are or who they love. That's deeply wrong. It goes against everything that we stand for. I think if more Americans understood that these injustices still exist in our country, they would want Congress to support the Equality Act, which would outlaw discrimination against LGBT people in employment, housing, public education, public accommodations, access to federal funding and credit, and the jury system. So that's one thing that I would do, take the case to the American people.
Yeah, which is cool. And then she also goes on to talk about, obviously, how Trump has promised to repeal all of the executive actions that President Obama has taken. And he's taken some pretty significant executive actions. He signed into, he, by executive order, ordered that, not only are federal government employees protected from discrimination, but anyone who contracts with federal government has to have that same policy in order to get contracts. And that's huge. I mean, that's them reaching as far as they have the power to reach, just with executive resolutions. So, I mean, I can appreciate that. One thing that she says here, and this is something that we probably need to look a little more in on to make sure that she's not just kind of, overly bragging about this, but there's a question about how the U.S. can play a more constructive role in the lives of LGBT folks living under regimes in other countries that are hostile to LGBT rights, particularly when those regimes are U.S. allies. And she talks about how the State Department actually started taking into consideration how a country treats their LGBT citizens when they deliver foreign aid. And, they made diplomats raise those issues with their governments. And she says that she helped lead the effort to pass the first ever UN resolution on LGBT human rights. Which, again, we probably want to be skeptical and look into that and make sure that she's not exaggerating on that. But, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like, yeah. I'm into that. And let's see. Okay, so this is the one that really kind of brought it home for me. And again, I'm always looking at this sort of cynically, but I couldn't help be moved by this. So they asked, what could a Hillary Clinton presidency do to stem the violence against trans women of color? And to reiterate, trans people face a disproportionate level of violence. Trans women of color bear the brunt of that violence almost entirely. Not completely entirely, but almost entirely. So she talks about the murders of trans women of color and points out that, the numbers that we have probably don't even fully account for the violence that goes unreported or the violence that goes ignored. And she talks about, we need to restore trust between law enforcement and communities by training on issues like implicit violence, use of force, fair and impartial interactions with the LGBT community. I mean, that's a huge thing. The police and the LGBT community are not friends, generally. And she says, and most of all, we need to say with one voice that transgender people are valued, they're loved, they are us, and they deserve to be treated that way. In the way of, being loved and being accepted. And I just think that, I think that's awesome. I mean,
just that she's acknowledging that that's a problem is a huge step in the right direction.
Exactly. Because at the very least, that means that she's hired an LGBT liaison for her campaign that really knows their stuff. And that she's got that voice in her ear telling her these things. Even if it's something that she never would have thought of if she hadn't had somebody else tell her, it's something that she decided to talk about and decided to answer and decided to not deflect the question. So, yeah, I think that's awesome. So, I think, obviously, I mean, I'm not going to go into it. We already talked about this in the DNC wrap-up episode. But, if as long as the things that she says are, translate into actions that she takes. I mean, at the very least, she's not going to undo all the executive action that President Obama's done, which, that's a low bar to set, but, that's where we're at this point. So we're going to take another quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to close the episode out, as we always do, with good news.
The Skeptic's Creed.
Wrong show, Ari. Damn it.
I always get that wrong. I just get confused.
You screw up everything.
I was on Cognitive Dissonance once, you guys, so now I feel like I'm totally on that show all the time.
You're practically a co-host.
Exactly.
More Atheist Manifesto right after this.
Here's an excerpt from Disproving Christianity by David G. McAfee.
Each argument and contradiction presented will bring us closer to disproving the main pillars of Christianity, using nothing more than logical thinking, statistics, scientific and historical data, and Holy Scriptures. The debates between Christians and non-Christians have raged for thousands of years, and I expect the conflict to continue. But I do hope that these arguments will allow those Christians who may not have questioned biblical fallibility in the past to realize that these texts are man-made, and they represent the ideas of those fallible individuals who created and edited the compilation of texts now considered to be the Holy Bible. They contain errors, contradictions, and a stagnant moral code which, in many ways, no longer coincides with the morality of modern man. What I hope to gain from presenting these arguments and little-known biblical passages to the reader is a sense of understanding of Scripture which may not be presented in Bible study or in church, and for good reason. If read with an open mind, I truly believe that this book will open people's eyes to the wonders of free thought in a way that other works utilizing a more philosophical approach cannot.
Disproving Christianity and Other Secular Writings by David G. McAfee is now available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
Before we jump back into the show, it's time to thank our patrons. Big shout out this week to Nicholas, Thank you so much for collaborating in our continuing mission to smuggle penises into women's restrooms and force everyone into their very own gay marriage. You can support the show by pledging as little as $1 per episode to support the activism we do. To find out more, head to patreon.com/thegaytheistmanifesto. Thank you. Welcome back to the show. In this final segment of the show, we are going to have a little dance party here, and we're going to celebrate some good news from our friends and listeners. So,
I love this part.
Oh my God, I do too, because I don't know, I love hearing happy things. So, many of you will remember from the episode that we did about trans surgery and why trans surgeries are important and the real story behind trans surgeries. And you'll remember our guest Jason, who was talking about getting phalloplasty. And he commented, my first phalloplasty stage is scheduled for July 2017. This is the last year with incorrect anatomy. Yeah! Dance party. Dance party. Dance party.
Dancing through an audio medium.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I mean, that's something that I can kind of empathize with because I'm at the very, very beginning of a long path leading toward my own surgical transition, because once I get this weight off, that's a big part of the reason why I'm doing this. So I'm just at the very, very beginning of that journey. So I'm with you.
Oh, yes. Someone who asked to remain anonymous, who is a friend of the show, said the U.S. military has finally allowed transgender troops to serve openly. I came out to my unit and they've been universally supportive. There are still hurdles to cross, still hoops to jump through, but change is in the making and it will only get better going forward.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean,
that makes me so happy.
Obviously, there's going to be a huge debate in the community about the military in general, military culture, how the military is used by the country. 100% sensitive to all of that, but at the end of the day, the folks in the military are human beings, deserve to be treated as such, and they deserve the support that the rest of us do. So
they deserve not to be kicked out of their job.
exactly. So this is something that's very, very awesome to hear. So glad. And the next one, God, I just hate you both. So Jeremiah just posted a picture of he and Ari just cheesing out with Jeremiah's huge eyeballs.
We were standing in line at the restaurant at the City Museum, and he was browsing Facebook and saw that, and he's like, hey, Ari, take a selfie. And then he posted it on there, just no comment, just the picture of us together. That's his good news. That's so sweet.
I'm glad one of us considers that good news.
Aww.
Did he show you my comment when he sent me the picture of you the first night?
Yes, he did, and that was rude as hell.
I'm gonna read it for context. When Ari got into town, Jeremiah sent me a picture of Ari flipping off the camera, so I'm not the only one who's rude. First of all, Ari.
He didn't say what he was doing with that picture.
Yeah, well, so flipping the bird is rude. You're rude.
Well, that's true. I can't really deny that.
And so my response was, I'm pooping right now, and I feel more affectionate toward my poop than I do toward Ari right now. Make sure they know this. And Jeremiah's response was, Roger. So that's a win.
Everyone's against me. Are we doing last names or just first
let's
names?
just do first names.
Okay. Jenna said, I'm not sure if others would call this good news, but it is to me. My preemie son will be turning 1 next month. I'm extremely excited. That is great news.
How is this not good news? This is awesome. I think there's like a whole community surrounding preemie kids, because that's a dangerous thing. Being born prematurely, that's huge, and I'm sure that was a really tough journey, and I'm really, really glad that your son got through that. So yeah, very, very excited. Unqualified good news. And our good friend Corinne, I love Corinne. I love her dearly. I lost 48 pounds, and I'm now going to bug the crap out of Callie on Fitbit. I have a Fitbit, buddy. and sure enough, not too long after that, I got an ad request on Fitbit because they have a friend system and a messaging system and
I didn't
stuff.
know that.
So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, it's cool. So so now we're long distance workout buddies. So I'm excited about that. So I'm gonna catch up to you with the weight loss. Not that it's a competition, but I'm gonna win.
Everyone has their own journey.
Right.
Sarah is living the dream here, and Sarah said, I moved cities and I'm living with the partner of my dreams. My friends use my pronouns. We have so much fun. The summer is beautiful, and I will experience autumn for the first time in years. Autumn is great. It's my favorite season.
Autumn is really great. I mean, I enjoy summer, but yeah, I mean, just happy times. You move cities, live with the partner of your dreams. That's awesome.
Yes, very, very happy for you.
So Danny said No Man's Sky came out this past week, which I think is sweet. Like, I'm really excited. It's a game. Have you been living under a rock for the last 15
Apparently,
years?
I don't know how I haven't heard of this because Zach is a huge gamer. What kind of game is this?
It's like an open-ended universe exploration game. It has something crazy like 18 quintillion planets or something like that.
What?
Yeah, it's procedurally generated, so the universe is almost infinitely huge.
This is why I don't play new games, because those kind of games give me such anxiety because I feel like I have to complete everything. So that's why I prefer older platformers like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, because you can actually do everything in the games.
Yeah, so that's exciting. I'm hoping Celeste has mentioned that she might get a PS4 soon, and if she does, I'm going to buy that game.
Gail said, I won my primary. I have no idea what that means, but I'm happy for you, Gail.
So Gail, and she's
running for office.
Gail's about as open as it gets, so we can use the last name. So Gail Jordan is board president, if memory serves, of Recovering from Religion, and one of the organizers of NanoCon, and just a super awesome activist, and she is running for state legislator in Tennessee, and she won her primary, so now she's going to move on to the general election for the state legislature in Tennessee as an open atheist.
Yes.
So
that's
I mean,
even better.
And not just as an open atheist, which is awesome, but I mean, she is a legitimately amazing person. We've had her on the show before to talk about Recovering from Religion and to talk about NanoCon. She is just the sweetest. I love her so much, and I'm really, really excited for the prospect of having her in a state legislature actually making decisions, because she's awesome. So my friend Julian says, my family is finally together. After a year and a half of switching back and forth between my two partners across the continental U.S., we are all three under one roof. Polylove! ! Even our pets are getting along. So, how does it ever get any better than this? My only fear, Julian, is that you have peaked.
Oh, no, don't say that.
I'm kidding. There's nowhere to go but up. Private note to Julian, I love you.
I love you too, Julian.
They've gone through lots of stuff recently, lots of struggles, and I love them dearly. They listen to the show, so hopefully they'll hear this and send me a message saying that they love me too.
Or maybe that they don't love you, whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, that could be, yeah.
Lindsay said, I just received a pretty substantial pay raise. Not bad for the one queer person at my level in a cis male-dominated industry. That's pretty great.
Holla! Go, Lindsay. That's awesome. Pay raises are awesome. I'm getting a pay raise soon, but only because they're eliminating our bonus system. So,
they're eliminating the bonus system and then giving you more money? When does this ever happen?
Well, basically, it's to make up for it. So we don't get bonuses anymore. They're going to give us a raise that basically would equal, it's a complex system. Basically, they're taking away our ability to get bonuses, but giving us a pay raise so we don't miss that money.
That's pretty great. Most companies would just be like, nope, no more money for you.
Well, right. So, yeah, something that I appreciated. So, Rob says, Great Britain have just overtaken China in the Olympics medal table? ? My wife, Ying, is not happy. Well...
I laughed at Ying's face.
Yeah, I think that's about... No, I don't want to laugh at anyone. This is a good news episode.
You're nicer than I am. But it's good news for Rob, right? And we only care about Rob.
That's true, because Rob is the one that commented.
Ying, you didn't comment on the thread, so that's kind of your fault.
Right, yeah. If Ying had commented, we would be supportive of Ying as well.
Let's see here. Steve said, my girlfriend
first of all, go ahead and drop that F-bomb, because this one's worth it.
This is great. My girlfriend is whooping breast cancer right in its fucking face, and she is adorable bald. Bonus.
That's amazing. I have a friend who has just gotten a clean bill of health after fighting down leukemia, which F cancer, and I am super, super happy for your girlfriend and for you, Steve. Lots of love.
Yes.
Tiffany says, kids are back in school, smiley face, and I can only imagine the peace and the comfort that entails.
Yes, I'm sure there are lots of celebrating parents right now. Sharon said, I started working at a new school and I'm happier than I've been in a long time.
Yes, hooray, happy. We love Sharon. Friend of the show.
It's just so important to have a job that you can be happy at, because that is, if you're working full time, that's the majority of your life. And it's just, I'm so happy too at my job. So I feel really, really happy for people who also enjoy their jobs, because if you have a job that you don't enjoy, it really kind of sucks the joy out of your whole life.
Out of your entire life, because that's, I've talked about my experience at my job before the one that I have now, being, getting anxious every night and having panic attacks. Like, it's just, it's bad. It's not fun. So definitely happy about that. Joey says, my wife and I are closing on our very first home on August 22nd. #adulting.
Hashtag.
So that's awesome. First house. That's exciting. I hope it's nice. I love you both, and I hope you're very, very happy there.
And your profile picture is a sweet kitty. I hope your kitty's happy too.
Yeah.
I hope your kitty likes your new house. Victoria said, I am feeling a ton better after having dealt with a blood clot, and I got diagnosed with sleep apnea. I'm excited for actually being able to get treated now. So not good news that you have sleep apnea, but great news that you're getting treated, so now you can start feeling better.
Victoria, solidarity.
Yes,
I'm telling
that's
you,
something you've been going through too, Callie.
I'm telling you, my CPAP machine is my everything. Like, on my list of favorite people in the world, Celeste is at the top, and my CPAP machine is like solid in the top 5.
Does it have a name?
It really should. I haven't really thought about that.
You need to give it a personality and assume its gender and everything.
Until such time as it expresses to me what its gender identity is. Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Actually, I identify as a humidifier.
I was born as a CPAP, but I identify as a humidifier.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Funny trans jokes.
Oh, yeah, that's what a funny trans joke sounds like, first of all. Just throw that out there. So I'll report back with the results of that.
It's okay, I have a trans friend. I'm allowed to say that.
Fair enough. And Rex says, I just got a job at my local gay-owned cafe, and they address my pronouns right out the gate with positivity, heart, heart.
Sweet.
Oh my god, that's awesome, because I know... I can only imagine... I was lucky because I was able to be introduced at my work as Callie. So, even though I'm sure it was no secret, just that people see me, and frankly, to some people it looks rather obvious that I'm trans, and that's I've come to peace with that. But I was introduced as Callie, and I was introduced as her, and I happen to work for a company where it's a very happy place to be queer and to be trans, so it wasn't an issue for me. But if we're talking about local small businesses, that kind of stuff, a lot of times you never know what you're gonna run into there. And a trans person going to get a job, it's like you have to have that conversation, tell them what your pronouns are, brace yourself for the bad response that you might possibly get, and the relief that comes when it's just like, oh, okay, those are your pronouns? Sweet. Here's how you clean the coffee machine. You know what I mean? Like that's cool. Like I'm a fan of that. So awesome. Yeah. Very happy for you. I posted
on the Gay Theist Manifesto page and on my personal page, which I will talk about later, a podcast episode that my partner Casey sent to me about using they, them, theirs pronouns in the workplace. And I highly, highly recommend that people listen to it. It's a really great story, and it's related to what Rex just talked about. So yes, if you have like 25 minutes to spare, go and listen to that. It's great. Amy said, I am dating a girl, a wonderful trans woman. Huge crush. We are almost as gross as some other unnamed peeps. And then lots of emojis.
Gosh, I just have no idea what she's talking about here.
Me and Jeremiah,
of course. Of course.
Duh.
I'm really happy for you, Amy, but you are not going to topple Celeste and I off our throne. I'm just throwing that out there.
I got one more that I want to read that someone actually messaged me right before we were about to start recording. This is from Tiffany, not the same Tiffany from before, a different Tiffany. My ex-wife hates that I'm trans and thinks that I'm living in Buffalo, New York, quote, pretending to be a woman. But since I moved out of Florida and I've been complimented in ways that I didn't believe, i.e. you're beautiful. After having a conversation with my ex-wife the other day, I believe those people now. And then she threw in, you guys keep up with the awesome work on the show. Can't wait to listen to the next show.
Oh,
so that is awesome that you now believe that you're beautiful.
That's
so
incredible.
Happy.
God, that's incredible. Oh, I love that so much.
Are you crying? That's a 3 for you guys.
I know. I had a little bit of alcohol at this gala thing earlier, so like it was a Long Island iced tea and like a typical size drink thing. I drank like half of it, and I was literally drunk. But
you're
like
a lightweight. So.
Well, I was a lightweight, and I was also on an empty stomach. Like I ate dinner, and about 10 minutes later, was completely sober. So, well. Thank you, everyone. Keira, especially. God, I loved having her on the show so much.
I'm so excited. People are going to be smiling so hard hearing that.
Yeah, and definitely want to thank everyone who submitted their good news on Facebook. We appreciate you sharing your stories with us, sharing your joy with us, and letting us celebrate with you. That, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. Definitely want to thank again everyone who contributed to the show here. Great stuff. Feeling all the feels. And you can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GaytheistCali. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheists.
Oh, Maya, you know I love you, but I'm afraid that we're growing apart. You just seem so distant lately, and you're not as interested in my body as you used to be. Even the panda costume doesn't seem to get you in the mood anymore. Don't be silly, Jim. You know I love you. I've just had a lot of responsibility at work, and with my ska, jazz, K-pop, rockabilly fusion band getting more gigs, I've had a lot going on. I'm just tired and stressed. Hey, how about we go and buy you that vintage gold-plated mustard bottle that you've had your eye on? Don't play games with me, Maya. I know you've been seeing someone else. Is it that Ari Stillman person you've been texting? What are you talking about? Of course not. Ari's just a friend. Don't lie to me. I saw the messages you've been exchanging with them on Facebook. And look right here, I took a screenshot of your email inbox from aristillman4@gmail.com. Subject, tonight I'm going to ride you like the one inside joke you have with an acquaintance who's super cool but way out of your league, so you desperately try to impress them in the vain hope that they'll think you're funny and want to be BFFs. Maya, look at me. I know that while we're making love, you listen to their abomination of a spin-off podcast with Jeremiah Traeger, the SJW Circle Jerk. Well, Maya, explain yourself. All right, it's true. I've been seeing Ari. I just don't love you anymore, Jim. Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of your damn spatula collection, I wouldn't have felt the need to sleep with someone else. Ari makes me feel special. They listen to my problems and hold my hand, and sometimes they do that special thing with their tongue that you never do for me anymore. I'm sorry, Jim, but I just can't be with you. Maya, wait. Will Maya and Jim reconcile? Will the SJW Circle Jerk ever be listenable? Will there be any bagels left when you get home, or did you eat the last one yesterday? Find out on the next exciting episode of Mundane Interpersonal Problems.
Oh, God.
That was the soap opera outro.
That's good. It's good. And you acted it very well. You should be in films.
Thank you. I'm just that good.
If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto and make a per episode donation to help us out. If that's not something that's doable, you can always head over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review that helps us get heard by more people. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, You need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.